Tom walked through the wide market street with steady steps. He had never seen a place so alive with colors and sounds. The stalls stretched as far as his eyes could reach, filled with lights that shifted between soft blue and bright green. Strange fruits shone in baskets, metal tools hummed with quiet energy, and voices of many species rose together like a wild song. He was still new to this planet. Humans were rare here. Every now and then, someone gave him a curious look, but most were too busy with trade to care. Tom liked it that way. He preferred to blend in, to observe without being noticed. The air carried a sweet smell mixed with smoke from cooking fires, and somewhere nearby a group of musicians played a slow tune with instruments he did not know. Tom slowed his walk near a stand selling polished stones that glowed faintly. The seller, a tall being with long arms and bright scales, shouted prices in a language Tom barely understood. He smiled politely and moved on. He had no interest in stones today. He only wanted to explore and learn. As he turned toward a row of food stalls, his eyes caught something unusual. A small figure walked quickly through the crowd, pulled along by a taller one. The figure was a little girl, no older than 8 or 9 in human years. Her skin carried a soft shimmer like starlight, and her silver eyes stood out even among the lights of the market. She wore a simple robe, too loose for her small frame, and her steps seemed uncertain. The tall figure holding her wrist moved with impatience. The grip was firm, almost harsh. The girl looked around with wide eyes, not at the stalls or the music, but at the people. Her gaze jumped from face to face, and when she found no one watching, her shoulders sank. Tom stopped walking. He felt something in his chest, a pull he could not explain. The scene did not look right to him. Most others passed without a glance. To them it was just another pair in the market. But Tom's eyes stayed fixed on the girl. He noticed how her wrist twisted slightly as if she tried to loosen the grip. He noticed how her steps dragged as if she did not want to go where the tall figure was leading her. He leaned against a post, pretending to look at a line of fruit. His ears stayed open. The crowd was too loud for him to hear clear words, but he caught the tone of the tall figure's voice. It was sharp, pressed low, not the way one would speak kindly to a child. The girl lowered her head, but her eyes flicked once toward Tom. It was only for a heartbeat, but in that glance Tom saw something that froze him in place. It was not fear alone. It was a silent call, as if she hoped someone, anyone, would notice. Tom straightened slowly. He told himself he might be mistaken. Perhaps the figure was her parent. Perhaps the girl was only upset about something small. But the tightness in his chest did not ease. He had seen children before, human and alien alike. He knew the look of a child who felt safe, and he knew the look of one who did not. This was the second. The tall figure pulled her deeper into the crowd. Tom followed with his eyes until they nearly disappeared between the stalls. His feet moved on their own, carrying him after them. He told himself he was only curious. He told himself he only wanted to be sure. But deep down he knew he could not turn away. The market grew louder as he pressed on. He passed a group of traders arguing over prices, their voices sharp and fast. He slipped around a stall with steaming bowls of soup, the smell rich and heavy. He brushed past a boy carrying a basket of wires and tools. Through it all, he kept his eyes fixed on the shimmer of the little girl's robe ahead. The tall figure walked fast, almost dragging her. Tom kept a careful distance, not wanting to draw attention. His mind filled with questions. Who was she? Why did she look so lost? Why was no one else seeing what he saw? He looked at the faces around him. Some were busy counting coins, some were laughing in groups, some were eating. No one looked twice at the girl. No one seemed to care. Tom felt a small rush of anger mixed with confusion. He was only one human in a world far from Earth. He had no power here, no voice that carried weight. Yet he could not shake the feeling that he alone had noticed something important. He thought back to Earth, to the times when he had seen a lost child in a crowd. People always helped, always looked out. But here it was different. Here, no one turned their head. The girl stumbled once on a loose stone, nearly falling. The tall figure jerked her arm to pull her forward. Tom clenched his jaw. He wanted to step in right there, but he forced himself to wait. He needed to be sure before he acted. He kept moving, keeping them in sight as they turned away from the busiest stalls toward a narrower street lined with cloth shops. Tom slowed, letting a group of shoppers pass between them so he would not stand out. He took a long breath, steadying himself. He had a choice to make. He could stop now, turn back, and tell himself it was none of his concern. But the image of the girl's silver eyes stayed with him. He had seen the way she looked at him, quick and pleading. That look was not something he could forget. As the narrow street stretched ahead, Tom felt his steps grow heavier with decision. He would not walk away. He would follow, and he would find out the truth. The market behind him faded into a dull hum, and the bright lights grew dimmer as he entered the shadows of the side street. The tall figure and the little girl moved ahead, unaware that a human watched closely. Tom's journey in this strange world had just taken a turn he did not expect. He did not know who the girl was, but he knew one thing with certainty. He had seen something wrong, and he could not ignore it. The narrow street was quieter than the market. Cloth stalls lined both sides, long sheets of fabric hanging like curtains, swaying gently in the breeze. The bright noise of voices and music faded behind Tom, replaced by the rustle of cloth and the low hum of shopkeepers working. Shadows stretched between the stalls, broken only by the soft glow of hanging lanterns. Tom kept his steps slow, his eyes fixed on the tall figure and the little girl ahead. The figure still pulled her along, the grip tight on her wrist. She did not resist openly, but her steps were heavy, as if each one was forced. Tom's mind raced with thoughts. He wanted to believe it was nothing, that she belonged to the figure and they were only in a hurry. But deep inside, he knew it was not true. He remembered the way her eyes had locked onto his back in the market. It had not been an accident. That was the look of someone reaching out in silence. He moved closer, keeping to the edge of the street. A merchant stacking folded cloth gave him a curious glance, but Tom kept walking as if he were simply looking for something to buy. His heart beat faster the longer he followed. Every instinct told him he was stepping into something bigger than himself. Still, he could not stop. The girl stumbled again, her foot catching on a crack in the stone path. This time she let out a small sound, barely more than a whimper. The tall figure bent down quickly, speaking words Tom could not hear, but the tone was sharp and commanding. The girl shrank back, nodding quickly before being pulled forward once more. Tom's jaw tightened. He had seen enough to know this was not right. But what could he do? He was only one person on a planet filled with species he barely understood. If he accused the figure and was wrong, he would cause trouble for himself. If he stayed quiet and was right, the girl would be taken away to who knew where. The figure turned suddenly into a side alley, narrow and dim. Tom quickened his pace, careful not to lose them. He pressed himself against the wall of a stall, waiting a moment before peeking around the corner. The alley was empty except for the two figures. The tall one leaned down, speaking close to the girl's face. The girl looked frightened, her eyes darting back toward the street. Her silver gaze swept across the walls, then upward, as if searching for any escape. She did not see Tom watching from the corner, but her unease was clear. Tom pulled back and leaned against the wall. His breath came shallow. He knew he was right now. The girl was not safe. He rubbed his hands against his sides, trying to steady himself. He was not a fighter, not a guard, not someone with authority. But he could not ignore what was happening. He stepped forward quietly, walking into the alley as if by chance. He kept his face calm, trying to look casual. The tall figure straightened at once, turning to face him. The grip on the girl's wrist did not loosen. "Evening," Tom said with a small nod, his voice steady though his heart raced. "Busy place out there. Quieter here." The tall figure gave no reply, only narrowed eyes. Tom glanced at the girl, who met his gaze for a split second before looking down again. Her small hands trembled where they hung by her side. Tom took another step forward, pretending to look at the fabric draped along the alley wall. "Nice cloth here. Reminds me of something I saw back home." His words were light, but his eyes stayed on the girl. The figure shifted uncomfortably, pulling the girl closer. Tom noticed how her small body leaned back ever so slightly, resisting the pull. In that moment, Tom felt the weight of choice again. He could walk away and tell himself it was none of his concern. But he already knew he would not. He had made his decision in the market when he saw her eyes. The figure spoke at last, a deep voice carrying a sharp tone. The words were in the local tongue, rough and clipped. Tom caught only a few, enough to understand the meaning. The figure was telling him to leave. Tom smiled faintly, keeping his voice calm. "I am only passing through. I just thought the girl looked a little lost." "Everything all right?" The girl lifted her head for a heartbeat, her silver eyes full of hope. She did not speak, but her gaze said more than words could. The figure tightened the grip on her wrist, answering quickly in the same sharp voice. Tom could not catch every word, but he understood the tone. The figure was claiming the girl belonged to him. Tom's chest grew heavy with unease. Something inside him told him the claim was false. He watched the girl closely. Her shoulders sank, but her eyes stayed locked on him. She wanted him to see. She wanted him to know. The alley grew still. The cloth swayed lightly in the breeze, brushing against the walls with a soft sound. Tom felt the tension hang in the air like a wire pulled too tight. At last, the figure turned sharply and pulled the girl deeper into the alley, away from Tom. The girl's steps dragged, but she did not cry out. She only looked back once more, her eyes finding Tom's. That single glance spoke louder than any shout. It was a plea, a call for help. Tom stood frozen for a moment, his hands clenched at his sides. He had no plan, no clear path ahead. But he knew one truth with certainty. He could not let her disappear into the shadows. He stepped forward again, his decision now firm. He would follow them, no matter the risk. The uneasy feeling in his chest was no longer doubt. It was certainty. The girl was in danger, and he was the only one who realized it. The alley stretched longer than Tom expected. Lanterns were fewer here, their glow dim, leaving long patches of shadow across the stone path. The tall figure led the girl deeper, their steps echoing against the walls. Tom kept his distance, moving carefully so his footsteps would not carry. His eyes never left the girl. Her silver eyes shone faintly even in the gloom. She glanced back once, quick and nervous, and in that glance Tom saw a message. It was small, hidden, but clear. She was asking for help. Tom's chest tightened. He had no plan, no idea what he could do against someone taller and stronger than him. But he knew he could not turn away. He walked slower, letting a stall curtain brush against his arm so he looked like a man passing through. The tall figure turned suddenly into a side lane that was darker still. Tom hurried forward and stopped at the corner. Peeking around, he saw the figure bend close to the girl, speaking low and sharp. She lowered her head and nodded quickly, but her small hands clenched at her sides. Tom pressed his back to the wall, thinking hard. If he stepped in too soon, the figure might drag her away faster. If he waited too long, he might lose them. He breathed slowly, trying to steady himself. He had always trusted his instincts, and right now they told him the girl was not safe. The figure pulled her again, and she stumbled forward. This time she lifted her head and found Tom's eyes in the shadow. For a heartbeat they locked, and she blinked twice, fast, before lowering her gaze again. It was not an accident. It was not chance. She had signaled him. Tom felt his heart race. He was sure now. She was not with someone she trusted. She wanted help but could not speak it aloud. Her silent plea had reached him. He stepped forward a little, calling out lightly, "Excuse me, do you know the way to the main square?" His tone was casual, as if he were only asking for directions. The tall figure turned, eyes narrow, words spilling in the local tongue. The voice was firm, impatient. Tom could not understand every word, but he caught enough. The figure was telling him to go away. Tom nodded slowly, pretending to accept it. "Thank you," he said softly. But his eyes slid to the girl again. She looked at him with the faintest spark of hope before she was pulled forward once more. Tom followed at a distance, keeping to the shadows. His mind raced with thoughts. He had to find a way to act, but how? He had no friends here, no guards to call, no power in this place. He had only his voice and his presence. The alley opened at last into a quieter square, lit by only 3 lanterns. Empty stalls lined the sides, their cloth covers tied down for the night. The figure stopped near the center, looking around as if checking for eyes that might be watching. Tom stayed near the edge, hiding behind a post. The girl stood still now, her shoulders tense. The figure leaned close to her, speaking again in that low harsh tone. Tom watched her small hands twist together, her head bowing lower. But then, slowly, she turned her face toward him. Her eyes found him once more. This time her gaze held longer. She did not blink away quickly. She let him see the fear, the quiet cry for help. Tom's decision was made. He could not let this continue. He stepped out from the shadow and walked forward, keeping his steps steady. His heart pounded, but his face stayed calm. The tall figure stiffened, turning toward him with a glare. Tom lifted a hand in a friendly wave. "Evening," he said lightly. "Strange to see this place so empty compared to the market." The figure gave no reply, only a growl of words Tom could not follow. The grip on the girl's arm tightened. She flinched but stayed quiet. Tom stopped a few steps away, his eyes on the girl. "You all right?" he asked softly, his voice directed at her. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Instead, she blinked again, slow and deliberate, as if to answer him without words. The figure barked something in the local tongue, louder now. Tom could hear the warning in the tone. He was being told to leave again. But he stayed where he was, steady and calm. He knew he could not fight this figure. But he also knew he could not step back. The girl had asked for his help in the only way she could. The square was quiet. The lanterns flickered in the soft wind. For a long moment, it was only the three of them, standing in silence. Tom spoke again, his voice firmer this time. "If she is with you, let her tell me herself. Just a word. That is all." The figure's eyes narrowed, the grip tightening on her wrist. But the girl looked at Tom, her silver eyes shining with silent strength. She gave the smallest shake of her head. It was enough. Tom's breath caught. The truth was clear now. She did not belong with this figure. She did not want to go. The figure muttered something low, pulling her sharply. But Tom stepped forward, blocking the way. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst, but he did not move aside. The figure glared down at him, tall and shadowed in the dim light. Tom stood his ground, his voice calm but firm. "She stays here. She does not want to go with you." The girl's eyes widened, her hands trembling. She had not expected him to stand for her. For the first time, she looked less afraid. The air in the square grew heavy. The tall figure shifted, weighing the moment. Tom did not move, his shoulders straight, his eyes locked. At last, the figure gave a low growl and turned, dragging the girl away again toward the far side of the square. But Tom followed. He knew this was not over. The silent plea in the girl's eyes had reached him, and he would not let her down. The night air grew cooler as Tom followed them through the empty square. The sound of the market was now faint, distant like an echo. Lanterns swayed above, their glow soft but unsteady, casting moving shadows across the stone path. The tall figure walked quickly, pulling the girl forward with every step. Tom's chest was heavy with unease. His mind kept telling him to stop. He was on a strange planet, alone, with no friends to call for help. If this went wrong, he might not even find his way back to the main streets. Yet his heart told him something else. It told him to keep going, to not let the girl vanish into the night. The girl glanced back again. Even in the dim light, Tom saw the plea in her silver eyes. She was tired, her small feet dragging, but she did not cry or shout. She knew her voice would bring no help here. She relied only on that silent connection between her eyes and his. Tom slowed his steps for a moment, thinking hard. He could not just trail behind forever. The figure would take her somewhere hidden, somewhere he might not be able to follow. If he wanted to help, he had to make a choice soon. He pressed his hand against the wall beside him, steadying his breath. He remembered his life on Earth, the times he had seen a child lost in a crowd. People had always stopped, always cared. But here no one even turned their head. In this world, he realized, maybe it would fall only on him. The figure turned into another alley, this one narrower and darker. Tom felt the weight of the moment press down on him. He knew he had reached the point where his choice mattered. Either he walked away and told himself it was not his problem, or he stepped forward and risked everything to help her. His hand curled into a fist. His decision was made. Tom straightened and walked faster, closing the distance. The sound of his footsteps reached the figure, who stopped suddenly and turned. For a brief moment, the two locked eyes in the shadows. The figure spoke harshly in the local tongue, words sharp and filled with warning. Tom could not understand them fully, but the meaning was clear. Leave. Tom shook his head slowly, his voice calm but steady. I cannot do that. She does not want to go with you. The girl's eyes widened. She looked at Tom with surprise, as if she had not believed anyone would truly speak for her. The figure tightened his grip on her arm and pulled her behind his side, shielding her from Tom's view. Tom took another step forward, not close enough to provoke but close enough to show he would not back down. Let her tell me herself, Tom said softly. If she says she is safe, I will walk away. For a long moment, the alley was silent. The figure did not answer. Instead, he pulled her forward again, turning his back to Tom. But Tom moved too. He walked alongside, keeping his distance but refusing to let them out of his sight. The figure grew more tense, glancing at him with sharp eyes. The girl looked between them, her small face showing both fear and hope. Tom's thoughts raced. He had no weapon, no plan, no allies. All he had was his voice and his resolve. Still, he knew that sometimes a firm presence could be stronger than force. If he stayed close and refused to leave, the figure might realize it was too risky to continue. They reached the end of the alley and stepped into a darker street with only one lantern at the corner. The air smelled of dust and damp stone. Few people walked here. The silence pressed down heavier than before. Tom stopped walking for a moment, his mind running through what he could do. He thought of running back to the market to find a guard, but by the time he returned, they would be gone. He thought of shouting for help, but he doubted anyone would care in this quiet street. There was only one choice. He had to stay close. He had to keep watching. The figure glanced back again, eyes narrow, clearly unsettled by Tom's presence. Tom did not look away. He kept his gaze steady, calm but firm. Finally, the figure spoke again, words Tom partly caught. The meaning was simple. Why are you following us? Tom answered in plain voice. Because she does not want to go with you. Because I saw her eyes. The girl looked at him, her silver gaze filled with quiet strength now. She had not spoken a word, yet her message was clear. She did not belong in the figure's hands. The figure hissed low, pulling her close again. Tom stayed where he was, his shoulders straight. His choice had been made already. He would not walk away. The air grew colder. The lantern flickered above, casting light across their faces. Tom's breath came slow and steady. He knew the danger he was walking into, but he also knew this was the right path. For a long moment, none of them moved. Then the figure turned sharply and began walking again, dragging the girl down the lonely street. Tom followed. His steps were firm, his eyes never leaving them. He did not know how this would end, but he knew he had made the decision that mattered most. He would not abandon the little girl. She glanced back once more, and this time her eyes did not only plead. They held gratitude, faint but real. For the first time, she knew someone was standing with her. And that, Tom thought, was enough to keep him moving forward into the unknown. The narrow street grew quieter with every step. The noise of the market was gone now, swallowed by the thick walls of stone and cloth. Only the faint sound of distant wind reached their ears. The tall figure walked fast, pulling the little girl along with a grip that never loosened. Tom followed close behind, careful not to let too much distance grow between them. His heart pounded, but his steps stayed steady. He knew this path was leading away from the main lights and into a part of the city where fewer eyes would be watching. That thought only strengthened his resolve. The girl glanced back once, her silver eyes shining even in the weak lantern light. For a moment their gazes met, and Tom read her message clearly. She had no voice here, but her silence spoke louder than any cry. She was asking him not to leave her. The street curved, leading into an even darker lane. Tall walls rose on both sides, the lanterns fewer, their glow faint and uneven. Tom quickened his pace, moving closer. He wanted to be near in case the figure tried to disappear into one of the side doors. At last the figure stopped. Tom froze where he stood, half hidden behind a wooden crate. The figure leaned down toward the girl, speaking in a low harsh voice. Though Tom could not understand all the words, he caught the sharp tone. It was not the voice of care. It was the voice of control. The girl shook her head quickly, but the grip on her arm grew tighter. Tom's hands clenched at his sides. He had been holding back until now, waiting for a clear sign. And here it was. She was not with family. She was not safe. She was being taken somewhere against her will. His mind raced. He had no weapon, no strength compared to the figure. But he had his presence, his voice, and the truth he had seen with his own eyes. That would have to be enough. Tom stepped out from behind the crate, his movements calm, his face steady. He did not shout or rush. Instead, he spoke as if greeting an old friend. "There you are," he said, his voice carrying lightly in the still air. "I thought I lost you in the crowd." The figure turned sharply, eyes narrowing. The girl's head lifted, surprise flashing in her silver gaze. Tom smiled faintly, walking closer with slow steps. "I have been looking everywhere," he added, his tone warm but firm. "You should have told me where you were going." The girl blinked at him, her small face shifting from fear to sudden hope. She understood his play. He was pretending they knew each other, giving her a chance to step away from the figure. The tall figure growled words in the local tongue, voice deep and heavy. Tom did not understand them fully, but the meaning was clear. The figure was claiming the girl as his. Tom kept his smile, though his heart thudded harder. He looked at the girl and asked softly, "Do you want to come with me?" For a moment, silence filled the alley. Then the girl nodded, small and quick, her silver eyes locked on his. That was all Tom needed. The figure tensed, pulling her closer. Tom stepped forward, blocking the narrow path with his body. His voice grew firm now, no longer playful. "She said yes. She wants to come with me." The figure glared at him, words sharp and angry spilling into the air. But Tom did not move aside. He stood tall, shoulders straight, his eyes steady. He knew he could not fight with strength, but he also knew strength was not the only power in this moment. The girl pressed closer to the figure, her small hands trembling. But her eyes stayed on Tom. She trusted him now. She knew he had seen the truth. The lantern above flickered, casting long shadows across the stone ground. Tom felt the air grow heavier, as if the city itself was holding its breath. For a long moment, none of them moved. Then the figure gave a sharp hiss and turned, pulling the girl quickly toward a narrow side passage. Tom stepped forward at once, his voice strong. "Stop," he said firmly. "She is not yours." The figure froze, shoulders stiff. Slowly, the grip on the girl's wrist loosened. Tom saw the hesitation in the figure's stance, the calculation of risk. The human was not leaving. The human was not afraid. At last, with a final glare, the figure released her arm. The girl stumbled forward, free for the first time. She looked at Tom with wide eyes, then quickly ran to his side. Her small hand clutched his sleeve tightly, as if she feared he might vanish too. Tom placed a steady hand on her shoulder, guiding her behind him. His chest swelled with relief, though his face stayed calm. He did not want the figure to see his weakness. The figure muttered something low and harsh, then turned and slipped into the shadows of the side passage, disappearing from sight. For a moment, the alley was silent again. Only the soft sound of the girl's breathing reached Tom's ears. She looked up at him, her silver eyes shimmering. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling but clear. Tom bent slightly, meeting her gaze. "You are safe now," he said gently. "I will not let anything happen to you." She held his sleeve tighter, her small face still pale with fear but touched now with trust. Tom looked around the alley, his thoughts racing. He knew this was not over. The figure might return, or others might be waiting. He had only taken the first step in protecting her. But it was a step that mattered. For now, she was free. And he had discovered the truth that no one else had seen. In a city full of countless species, it was the human heart that noticed what others ignored. The little girl stood close to Tom, her hand still gripping his sleeve. Her silver eyes glowed faintly in the lantern light, filled with both fear and hope. Tom glanced down at her, then back toward the dark passage where the figure had vanished. His body remained tense, ready for whatever might come next. The alley felt too quiet now. The silence pressed in like a weight, broken only by the sound of the girl's soft breathing. Tom knew the danger was not gone. Whoever that figure was, they would not give up so easily. He bent down slightly, speaking gently to her. "We need to get back to the market. There are more people there. It will be safer." She nodded quickly, though her small hands trembled. She stayed close as Tom guided her back toward the wider street. His eyes scanned every corner, every shadow, expecting the figure to reappear at any moment. As they reached the end of the narrow lane, a tall shape stepped out of the darkness. The figure had returned. The girl froze, clutching Tom's arm tighter. Tom stepped in front of her, blocking her with his body. His heart pounded, but his voice came steady. "You cannot take her. She has chosen to stay with me." The figure's eyes burned in the dim light, words spilling out in a low, harsh tone. Tom did not understand them all, but the meaning was clear. The figure was demanding the girl back. Tom shook his head slowly. "No," he said firmly. "She does not want to go with you." The girl peeked from behind him, her silver gaze locked on Tom. She seemed to draw strength from his steady voice. For the first time, she did not look only afraid. She looked ready to stand with him. The figure took a step closer. Tom did not back away. His feet rooted firmly on the stone ground. He knew he could not match the figure's strength, but he also knew he could not show fear. "You want her?" Tom said calmly. "Then let her speak. Ask her what she wants." The figure growled something low, refusing. Tom's jaw tightened. He turned to the girl, lowering his voice gently. "Do you want to stay with him, or do you want to stay with me?" Her answer came in silence. She stepped forward slightly, pressing her hand tighter into Tom's sleeve. Her small head shook once, clear and firm. Tom lifted his chin, his voice louder now. "There. You see? She does not want to go with you." The figure's glare deepened, but Tom stood his ground. The moment stretched heavy between them. Tom's chest rose and fell with each breath, his body tense like a drawn bow. At last, the figure seemed to realize the truth. The human would not step aside. The girl would not return willingly. The risk of drawing more eyes was growing too high. With a final sharp hiss, the figure turned and slipped once more into the shadows, this time not looking back. Tom exhaled slowly, his shoulders loosening just a little. The danger had not ended, but for now the girl was safe. He looked down at her. "You are safe," he repeated gently. "I promise." Her silver eyes shimmered as she whispered, "You stayed." Tom nodded. "Of course. I could not walk away." Together they began walking back toward the brighter streets. Each step felt lighter, though Tom's senses stayed alert. The girl walked close, no longer being pulled by force but choosing to follow beside him. The lanterns grew brighter as they neared the edge of the market. The sound of voices returned, faint at first, then stronger with each turn. Music and chatter filled the air once more. For the first time since he had seen her in the crowd, the girl's shoulders relaxed a little. She looked around at the stalls and the lights, her eyes wide not with fear this time but with wonder. Tom guided her toward a quiet corner where a small fountain trickled water into a stone basin. They sat on the edge, the noise of the market humming around them. He turned to her softly. "What is your name?" She hesitated, then answered in a voice so faint he had to lean close to hear. "Lena." Tom smiled gently. "That is a beautiful name." Her silver eyes lifted to his, studying his face with quiet curiosity. "Why did you help me?" she asked. Tom thought for a moment before answering. "Because I saw something no one else saw. You needed help. And sometimes, that is enough." Lena's small hands folded in her lap, her expression thoughtful. She had lived in a world where most looked away. To her, Tom's choice to notice her, to stand for her, felt like something rare and powerful. They sat in silence for a while, the fountain's soft sound wrapping around them. Tom kept watching the crowd, making sure the figure did not return. But he also allowed himself a moment of calm. For the first time that night, he felt a spark of hope. The confrontation had shown him something important. He might not have power, weapons, or authority here. But he had something else, something stronger. The courage to act when no one else would. And that, he realized, made all the difference. The fountain glowed softly under the market lights. Lena sat close beside Tom, her silver eyes reflecting the colors around them. She no longer looked as frightened as before, though her small hands still rested on the edge of his sleeve as if afraid he might disappear. Tom sat quietly, watching the crowd flow by. Every face seemed busy with trade and chatter, yet none seemed aware of what had nearly happened in the dark alleys beyond. He thought about how many had passed Lena earlier without seeing her distress. That thought made his chest tighten. Lena broke the silence with a soft question. "Will he come back?" Tom glanced at her. "He might try. But if he does, I will be here. And I will not let him take you." Her silver eyes searched his face for a long moment, as if testing his words. Then she nodded slowly, as if choosing to believe. Tom leaned back slightly, letting the sound of the fountain ease his mind. Still, he could not ignore the weight of the moment. Helping her once was not enough. He needed to find a way to keep her safe for good. He thought about the spaceport nearby. Ships came and went every hour, carrying travelers across worlds. Perhaps there was someone who knew Lena, someone searching for her. Perhaps her home was not far, and she only needed guidance to return. He looked down at her gently. "Lena, where is your family?" Her eyes lowered to the ground. For a moment she said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice was faint. "Gone." Tom's heart sank. He had feared that answer. But he stayed calm, not wanting to add to her sadness. "Then we will find a place for you," he said firmly. "You do not have to be alone." Her gaze lifted, cautious but hopeful. "With you?" Tom felt the weight of her question. He had come to the city as a visitor, just another face in the endless crowd. He had not planned for this, had not expected to be pulled into someone else's life. Yet as he looked at Lena, he realized the choice had already been made. He could not leave her behind. "Yes," he said at last. "With me." A small smile touched her face, fragile but real. She leaned closer, resting her head lightly against his arm. For the first time, she looked at peace. The night grew deeper, and the market slowly thinned. Lanterns dimmed one by one, their glow fading into the cool air. Tom knew they could not remain at the fountain forever. He stood and held out his hand. "Come," he said gently. "We need to move before it gets too quiet here." Lena took his hand without hesitation. Together they walked through the market, weaving between the last stalls that were closing for the night. The city around them seemed different now. It was no longer just stone streets and shadowed alleys. It was a place of both danger and promise, depending on the path one chose. Tom guided her toward the distant glow of the spaceport. Its tall gates rose like watchtowers, the hum of ships filling the air. He had no clear plan yet, but he knew this was where answers might begin. As they approached, a group of officials in long uniforms walked by. Their eyes scanned the crowd with practiced sharpness. Tom thought about asking for help, but a quiet voice inside warned him to be careful. Not everyone could be trusted, and not everyone would believe his story. Instead, he focused on finding a safe place for the night. A small inn stood near the edge of the port, its windows warm with light. He guided Lena inside, where the keeper greeted them with a polite nod. No questions were asked. That was a relief. In the quiet room upstairs, Tom helped Lena settle near the window. She sat on the edge of the bed, her silver eyes looking out at the ships that glided across the dark sky. "They are so many," she whispered. Tom nodded. "Yes. Each one going to a different place. One of them might lead us to your home, or to someone who can help us." She turned to him, her gaze steady now. "And you will come too?" Tom smiled faintly. "Of course. I gave you my word." The night passed slowly, but peacefully. For the first time, Lena slept without fear, her small form curled under the soft blanket. Tom sat near the window, keeping watch. His thoughts wandered, but his purpose stayed clear. He had found someone who needed him, and he would not walk away. When morning came, the city awoke with fresh noise and color. Tom and Lena left the inn together, stepping back into the endless stream of travelers. The spaceport gates loomed ahead once more. Lena's hand slipped into his, her grip light but steady. She no longer looked like a girl lost in fear. She looked like someone who had found hope. As they walked, Tom realized something important. He had come here as a stranger, just one human among many different beings. But in this vast city, he had been the only one to notice the truth. The only one to act. That was what made humans different. Not strength, not size, not power. It was the simple courage to see what others ignored, and to choose to stand where it mattered. Tom looked down at Lena, her silver eyes shining in the morning light. She looked back at him, and in her gaze he saw both trust and gratitude. Their journey was only beginning, but already the path was clear. In a galaxy filled with countless species, a single human had made the difference. And a little alien girl, once lost and afraid, had found safety in that choice. Together, they stepped through the gates of the spaceport, ready to face whatever came next. The story of one human and one small alien was far from over, but it had already shown something powerful. Humanity's strength was not in weapons or wealth. It was in the simple act of noticing, caring, and refusing to turn away. And sometimes, that was enough to change a life forever.